Hello, everybody. How are we doing today? Right, I am just going to try and get a little bit of admin done here to try and help people from LinkedIn join. That doesn't seem to make much of a difference. Okay, so I can see myself on LinkedIn. I can see Pratik, who's joined us from YouTube. So that's awesome. So anybody who is on LinkedIn, hopefully you can see and hear me. There's a little bit of a delay, but if anyone on LinkedIn is able to hear me at this point, please just type something in the comments so that I know you are there. I think we have Michael and Richard who are on the LinkedIn chat. So let me just please add some comments. Sorry, guys, just going to try and get everybody in the same place at the same place, same time. Michael says LinkedIn's working perfectly. Awesome, Michael. Thank you so much. That really, really helps. All right, so I can now shut down LinkedIn on this other account because I can't tell you how weird it is seeing myself in two different places at once. Right, so let's just kind of wait for people to rock in. Usually people take a few minutes to arrive. Pratik, Mahesh, LinkedIn user, and Paul A, you are very well timed. Well done for being so efficient. Why don't we just say some intros? So Pratik, Mahesh, Paul, where are you coming from? I think Paul A, I recognize your name. So we've met before, I think. Muntaser, you've got some good news for us. That's exciting. I will make sure I put that up on the screen later. Pratik, you're from Sydney. Oh my God. It's like 2:30 in the morning, isn't it, Pratik? What are you doing awake at 2:30 in the morning? You crazy cat, you. I hope you're not awake that early just to come here. But welcome, mate, as they would say. Here's my Australian accent. I don't know how good that is or whether you think it's terrible or not, but it's only 11:30 p.m. Oh, all right, that's not as bad as I thought it would be. All right. You've got an interview. All right, so you're doing your preparation. Great. Okay, that was shocking. So I'm going to move back to my English accent. That's going to be so amusing on the YouTube playback. People are going to think I'm nuts. It's going to be my drop-off point where it just goes ting. Right, Mahesh, Paul A, where have you come from? Oh, UAE. United Arab Emirates. Excellent. Brilliant. I'm glad because I set this time up specifically because I wanted to get to that side of the world. So awesome. I'm really pleased that you made it, Mahesh. All right. So we'll get going and people will arrive when they arrive. So I'm really sorry about the amount of reflection in my glasses. I'm going to see if I can do a little bit about that. I'm blind as a bat. I'm not a fan of contact lenses. So I need to wear my glasses. And then of course you can see the reflection of my screen. You can see the light ring as well. So I'm really sorry about that. I wish my eyesight was better. Oh, we got Bikram and Lisa's arrived. Excellent. If any of you would like me to have a go at doing an accent, I'll give it a go just for the entertainment value. It probably won't be my highest rated YouTube video, but hey, I could do with some entertainment today because I'm still struggling from a really bad back problem and I'm quite miserable. So anything to entertain myself would be great. So I'll take all challenges. Right. So my numbers have started dropping already. Let me introduce myself. So I'm Gigi. I am the Amazon interview whiz. I am an ex-Amazonian and particularly useful for you guys. I was also an interview bar raiser when I was at Amazon. I now run my own Amazon interview preparation academy. I have a very specific mission that I want to make Amazon interview expertise accessible to everybody. When I was bar raising and interviewing, I could very clearly see the people who had coaching. They knew exactly what to say. They knew the inside language, etc. I got curious, looked into how much coaching cost, and I thought it cost quite a lot. I think you can pay anything from like $200 all the way up to $500 an hour. And I thought that probably wasn't going to be affordable for the majority of people. And so from that, I came up with the idea to build my academy, which is effectively a digital program for interview preparation, which means I can scale it, which means I can price it very affordably. I also created this YouTube channel, which has got like 2.5 hours, maybe a bit more by now, of very, very specific, actionable, free content, which you can use to prep for your interview. And of course, I do these sessions as well. You also find me on LinkedIn. You also find me on Clubhouse. Okay, so how we're going to run today's, what else have I got to tell you? Right, rules of the game today. Put your questions in the comments box, please. I will try and pick questions that are useful for as many people as possible. I'm not going to be able to answer very specific questions for specific roles or particularly technical questions. There are 300 at least different job families in Amazon, and no one person can be a technical expert in all of those. I am absolutely an expert in the leadership principles. I'm absolutely an expert when it comes to interview strategy. So that's where we're going to focus the questions on. Please don't say any general tips, please, Gigi. Yeah, 2.5 hours worth of general tips. They're all in my YouTube channel. So if you're looking for general tips, please just head over there. And then for you guys in YouTube, because there's quite a lot of you on YouTube there, please, I really, really need you guys to like the stream, comment afterwards. It makes a big difference to the algorithm. I get so many people saying, oh, Gigi, I only found you a couple of days before my interview. I need really that algorithm support to surface my content to more people. So in return for what I'm doing for you, please do like and comment on the stream, and that will help me crack the algorithm. Okay, what else? That'll do, I think, for now. Oh, please do stay all the way till the end. I have an incredible freebie to give away to you. Promise you it's incredible and you will absolutely get value from it. So stick around to the end and I will take you through that freebie and how you get it. So we've got quite a few people with us now. So why don't we get cracking? Please just type your questions in the comments box. No question is a bad question. No question is a silly question. I should be able to answer the vast majority of your questions. There are some things that are confidential when it comes to Amazon information that I am legally bound not to share, but it's not a huge amount. So in the main, I should be able to answer pretty much any of your questions. So shoot is all I'll say. Let's get going. But I think the first thing is, let's just, whilst you guys are thinking, here we go. I just wanted to say congratulations to Muntaser. I hope I have pronounced your name correctly. And you've got a job in Amazon Island, which is awesome. So my husband's Irish, so the Gallagher name is Irish. So I lived in Ireland for a number of years. So it's a cool place to live and work. So congratulations. That's absolutely incredible. Well done. And you are absolutely welcome for all of the support. It's part of my mission to make it possible for everybody. So have an amazing career. Congratulations. Crowd goes wild. And I would do the Irish accent, but actually that's one accent that I just can't do. It's crazy because I lived there and I could tell you the difference between a Kerry accent, a Cork accent, a Dub accent, Tralee. I can tell you it all, but I cannot do them. I don't know why. It's just not possible. So I failed on the first hurdle there. All right. Well done, Muntaser. Really, congratulations. Right. So let's keep going. Right. Okay, Jasir. You asked me a really good question the other day, Jasir. I was going through the editing from the last session and you asked an excellent question then. So welcome back. Can I please share my thoughts on spending too long to answer one question? Like 5 minutes per single question. All right. So you will hear lots of different things from different people about what the right length answer is for an interview question. Some people will tell you 1 to 2 minutes, some will tell you 3 to 4 minutes, others will tell you 7 to 8 minutes, blah, blah, blah. So my perspective is your goal is to share the behavioral information on the example that you are sharing. And what you don't want to do is say, oh my goodness, I have to not mention that, not mention that, not mention that, not mention that, because I need to squeeze it into 1 or 2 minutes. My recommendation is that you get written down, all of the things that you did behavior-wise in that example that relate to the leadership principle or principles that you plan to use that example for. Now, if you've done that and you have stripped out anything that is not contextual, so contextual meaning that it's important for the interviewer to understand that information for their story to make sense, and you stripped out anything that isn't behavioral, so what you did, what you said, who you spoke to, as pertains to those leadership principles. If you've stripped out everything else that isn't those two things, then leave it as it is. I have had interviews with candidates where one example has taken 10 minutes to work through by the time they've taken me through what they wanted to tell me, and I've asked follow-up questions. I know other interviewers, although they're not necessarily supposed to, have only asked the candidate one question in the whole of the interview. So you don't want to be in a position where when you sit down and do your bleh, where no one's asking you any questions back, where the whole thing takes you 10, 15 minutes to run through. That clearly is too long. But equally, I would say to you, if your bleh, without anybody asking you any questions, runs to 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes, I would say it's not a problem. As long as you're not repeating yourself, as long as you're not rambling, as long as you're focusing on context and behaviors, then that is what they need. The last thing you want to do is limit what you say to a certain range of time, 3 to 4 minutes, leave out a whole bunch of important behaviors and hope that the interviewer's follow-up questions will ask you exactly the right question so you can get that behavioral information out there. Because God forbid, they may not actually ask you the right follow-up question, and some really important behavioral data that might help you land the job will never get shared. So 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes, I would say, is absolutely fine as long as it is context or behavioral information. I hope that helps, Jasir. Really good question once again. You can come back. Okay. Oh, Iatha's back. Oh, Iatha. Welcome back. It's your day one. That's so exciting. So, guys, I put this up because number one, I'm just so excited to see Iatha back and that they're on their day one, which is awesome that I managed to make it into your day one at Amazon. I hope your onboarding is going well. And I can't remember. I was going to say there's a particular name for the for the course that you go through your whole plan, but I can't remember it's called now and I'll embarrass myself. But also wanted you guys to know, I know you'll see so many people who don't manage to land jobs at Amazon. So many people apply, as you would imagine, even though there are so many jobs open. I think I read a stat the other day, there's something like 56,000 roles open at Amazon. Actually, I reckon that's probably just a US stat rather than a global stat. So many people obviously apply, and therefore it looks like so many people don't make it, but so many people do. They have over 1 million employees, and Iatha is one of them. Hard work, focus, commitment will get you there. Well done, Iatha. I'm so pleased you're here on your day one. Say hello to everybody for me. Thank you so much for joining, and thank you very, very much for the compliments. I'm very, very grateful. Work hard, have fun, make history. I think that's right. Take care. Thank you. Oh, I love seeing people come back. All right. Mahesh. Yeah, okay. This is a good question. So, on the failure story, does it need to be an old one? You read somewhere that you shouldn't say failure is a recent one. Funnily enough, I also saw a post that said that exact thing, and it was on LinkedIn and it was from an Amazon interview coach. Now, this person's logic for saying that was that if you say something happened recently, it will make your interviewer believe that you are prone to mistakes. And they're looking at that from a statistical point of view. What is the probability that this person would have both made a mistake recently and be sat down here talking to me about it? Statistically speaking, they must have to make mistakes quite frequently in order for the stars to align for me to be asking this question now and them to be saying it's a recent mistake. I think that's a bit thin, to be honest with you. I can kind of wrap my head around the logic about the statistical probabilities of recency, but it's a bit overthinking it as far as I'm concerned. What you want to do is focus on a failure that will tell a really strong story about your recovery. That's got to be your priority rather than prioritizing how long ago the mistake was. So, if you have a relatively recent mistake, but one that really, really shows your strengths in being able to recover from that mistake and then build belts and braces, processes and mechanisms to make sure that you never make that mistake again and neither does anybody else, then that's the one you should use. Don't worry about whether it was a recent one or one that happened years ago. If you have one that meets that criteria of showing really impressive recovery and it happened a little while ago, use that one. If you have one that shows that incredible recovery and it happened 10 years ago, don't use that one because that's a very long time ago. So maybe not, but it wouldn't be my priority criteria when I was trying to choose an example for the failure question. I kind of get the logic that this person was sharing. I know the person, I have respect for the person, but I think they're overthinking what the interviewer is going to be focusing on. So I hope that helps. Okay. What else do we have? Yeah, Bikram. Great. So I'm glad you asked this question, Bikram, because a lot of people spend a ridiculous amount of time trawling through the internet, trying to find all of the interview questions that they may be asked by an Amazonian. And there are well over 100 of them in the Amazon interview question bank, and then trying to prepare a specific answer for every single specific question. Now, the Amazon interview question bank is obviously there for Amazon interviewers to use to ask questions, but they don't have to ask those specific questions. They can make up questions of their own based on their knowledge of the Amazon leadership principles. So it is not at all unusual for an interviewer not to stick to the Amazon interview question bank. Bikram, I'm guessing you're one of those people that somehow got hold of the Amazon interview question bank if you know that the question you were asked was not directly from the Amazon interview question bank. But therein lies the risk. If you rely on the fact that you think that you found all of the questions from the Amazon interview question bank and you've got an answer for every single one of them, then when someone comes along and asks you a question that isn't on the Amazon interview question bank, which they are entirely entitled to do, you get thrown. So from a preparation point of view, my strong advice to everybody is forget the Amazon interview question bank because you will never be able to predict which question you get. What you need to do is really, really, really understand the leadership principles, the different facets of the leadership principles. So all leadership principles have a few different facets associated with them. You'll get the Customer Obsession Masterclass that I offer from me, and you'll see what I mean when I say that. Customer Obsession has 4 facets: coaching, challenging, anticipating, and championing. Once you know what those facets are, you can then create examples. So can I think of a time where I both had to anticipate what a customer needed and then coach them towards it? Yes, I know what that example is, right? I'm going to document that. Can I think of an example where I had to both challenge a customer and champion them? Yes, okay, I have an example for that. Because every single question that anyone is going to ask you about customer obsession will have its roots in those concepts, those 4 concepts I just shared. So if you have examples in your head for those 4 concepts, it doesn't matter what question somebody comes up with, even if they make it up on the spot, because they understand what that leadership principle is all about. That question will inevitably be answerable by an example that you have created based on those facets. So fully expect an interviewer to make up their own questions. Fully expect that you won't have prepared every single answer for every single possible question, but make sure that you understand the facets, and then it will not matter whether the interviewer is using a question that's been on the Amazon interview question bank for the past 20 years or whether they've made it up on the spot, because you will be well prepared. So I hope that helps. But please, people, please don't spend all your time trawling the web for the Amazon interview question bank questions. It take up so much of your time, and you may well find yourself potentially in the situation where I'm hypothesizing Bikram found himself, which is somebody asked him something completely different. Plus, there's a whole load of tripe on the web when it says, what are the most common Amazon interview questions? There are many, many ones, and I have a video about it on my YouTube channel. There are many questions that people claim are common Amazon interview questions that are not. And that would be a real waste of time to prepare for those. Okay, so I hope I covered that question for you, Bikram. Moving on. Oh, I say moving on. Doesn't seem to be any more questions. Does nobody have any more questions for me, guys? What's going on here? You really don't want to be sit here doing all my accents, do you, whilst somebody comes up with an extra question? So, oh, I don't know what to do. I've never had this. Okay. Well, this is strange. This has never happened to me before, where people have run out of questions to ask. Right. So, oh, yes. Whilst you guys are thinking of new questions, let me talk to you about the new leadership principles. So, up until so hopefully you guys all know that Amazon released 2 new leadership principles. I think it was on the 1st of July. And my advice has been, up until now, not to spend much time worrying about those leadership principles, because the rollout of those principles, which requires I know we've talked about the Amazon interview question bank, but requires the Amazon interview question bank to be updated and requires a criteria for what good and what bad looks like for each of those different leadership principles to be developed and then rolled out to all the Amazonians for them to then start using it. So that didn't exist at the time they launched it. They literally just launched the leadership principles with the different definitions. Now, as I understand it from my connections in Amazon, the AIQB and the criteria has been released to the Amazonians. So it is now possible that you will be asked questions on those leadership principles. So pay attention to your job description. as I say to everybody, and I do have a video about it on my YouTube channel, the best way to try and anticipate what leadership principles you're going to be asked questions on is to really, really focus deeply on your job description, line by line by line by line, like go through it, underline things, try and pick up cues as to what the leadership principle that particular sentence is talking about, and then use that as your guide for what the key leadership principles for your job are going to be. Plus, of course, always take the opportunity to ask your recruiter. They may not tell you. I think it's about a 50-50 chance. I hear about half people who tell me they did get the answer and about half don't. No one's going to hold it against you if you don't, but give it a go and ask your recruiter for the key leadership principles. I suspect these will not be hugely popular leadership principles when it comes to interviewing for various reasons, but that is my pure speculation. Everyone should still expect to be prepared to answer questions on them. Okay, so we have a couple more questions now. So, sorry, I don't know where I went there. Yeah, okay, Yogesh. I hope I pronounced that right, by the way, and welcome. I don't think I've seen you here before. So you had your second phone screen today. Excellent. And you were told your responses were good. Does it mean anything, or is it a generalized response? So generally, Amazonians are taught to be quite kind of po-faced about their feelings on a candidate's response. Really, what you're taught to do when you're interviewing at Amazon is to just gather the data. You're really encouraged not to make decisions in the moment. So the training is all about, when you're interviewing someone, you are literally just gathering the data and trying not to come to any conclusions whatsoever. And it's only when you then take away your notes and start to read through the data, compare the data to what you know to be the good behaviors as defined by the criteria on the leadership principles. At that point, you're really supposed to start kind of thinking about how you feel about the candidate, when you're not really supposed to do that whilst you're interviewing them. So I would suggest to you that you probably shouldn't take anything that anybody says to you in the interview as directive of anything, whether it's good or whether it's bad, because they shouldn't be making their decision there. In fact, they won't be making their decision there. They will make their decision once they've taken the notes away and done all of their deconstruction. I can tell you, I have left interviews in the past as an interviewer and felt really great about the candidate and thought they were amazing. But then when I read through my notes and really started to cut through, I realized that actually I was more flying off my personal emotion and how I related to the candidate more than I was the data. And actually, when I looked at the data, the candidate wasn't as strong as I felt they were when I left the room. Vice versa has also happened to me, where I've left a room thinking, I'm not sure that candidate is bar raising. And then when I went back to my notes and dug through all of the data, I found myself changing my mind. So the Amazon interview process is built in such a way that actually it's really unpredictable and things can swing in either direction, even when you are the only person interviewing a candidate. So I'm obviously not telling you it's like not true, but equally, I'm not telling you that it is true either. I think you're just going to have to wait and see. But in the meantime, Yogesh, I hope you are doing what I advise everybody to do. And I do have a video on my YouTube channel about it, which is to sit down and write down everything that you remember about that interview, right? Everything you were asked and everything you said in response and every response they gave you, because you may well be moving on to Loop. And if you are, you want that information so that you can prep yourself for Loop. If you don't make it to Loop, you still want that information so that you can try and dissect your own performance, because you're not going to get feedback from the recruiter. You can dissect your own performance for learnings. So focus on that rather than worrying too much about whether what the interviewer said to you was or wasn't indicative of a positive outcome. I have my fingers crossed for you. Okay. Pratik, I can't answer your question specifically for a network technician trainee role. As I said at the beginning, if you weren't here, I can't remember. There's so much variation. Let me just pop it up here. So Pratik is asking me for exactly what he should expect from a 1-hour phone interview for that particular role. I cannot tell you that because every single team and every single manager does things differently. In some roles, you could expect that I don't even know whether this is a first round or a second round. So in a first or a second round, a team might focus only on behavioral. They might focus only on technical competencies. They might mix it up between the two. It's entirely up to them. So what you need to prepare yourself when you go into an Amazon interview every single time is to be able to talk through the leadership principles and talk about behavioral examples using the STAR structure. I always put an I on the end of it, STAR-E. I have a video on my YouTube channel that talks about the hidden Amazon leadership principle. That's what you should go and look at for STAR-E. What you should also then do is be prepared to talk about your technical competencies. You might get asked questions around your technical background. And then, of course, you need to be prepared with good questions to ask your interviewer once your actual interview is over, and they will give you, 5 minutes at the end to ask your questions. So, Pratik, I cannot tell you exactly what combination of that you're going to get, but just make sure you're prepared for those 3 things, and you should have all of your bases covered. Okay, moving on then. Yeah. Mahesh, okay. So what if you don't know the questions belong to which leadership principle? Because a lot could be used across various leadership principle scenarios. Right. So the whole point of your preparation is so that you don't have to predict or sit in the interview trying to fathom in your head, is that customer obsession? Is that, hire and develop the best? Although clearly it won't be one of those two because they're very different. But the whole point of your preparation is so that you do that work up front. So you create scenarios, examples from your career history based on the leadership principles. So you'll have a bank of, let's say, I'm going to make the number up because different people choose different numbers, but let's say 10 to 15 different examples. And that's all that you've pulled from the leadership principles, right? If you imagine we've got a triangle here. Imagine the leadership principle is there. You've understood it and you have pulled knowledge from that to create a whole bank of 10 to 15 examples. The interviewer will be asking you questions. Those questions will have been pulled from the leadership principles, right? So they're pulling from exactly the same place as you're pulling. So when they ask you questions, what should happen is that the questions that they're asking you can be related to the examples that you've already got in your bank here. You won't need to worry about, which leadership principle it is. Someone will ask you the question and you'll just say to yourself, that sounds a bit like an example that I have in my 10 to 15 examples in my question bank. And therefore, you don't even have to think about what leadership principle the interviewer is asking you about. All you need to think about is, does it sound like a scenario that I have prepared in my bank of 10 to 15? Now, as you rightly say, it might be that as you start to explain the example, it's not quite the leadership principle that the interviewer was talking about, because sometimes there is some similarities in questions. So, for example, questions in I'll write a lot tend to sound a bit similar to bias for action. They're both about decision-making without a lot of data, decision-making with no data. They can be very similar. It's the interviewer's job then, if they feel that you aren't quite hitting the mark for the leadership principle that they want to gather data on, it's their job to ask you follow-up questions to get you exactly onto the leadership principle that they are looking for data on. So it's not all on you to 100% match the leadership principle. Your interviewer plays a role in that. What you need to do is understand the leadership principles, understand all of their different facets, come up with examples that could talk to those facets. And then when your interviewer asks a question, you should be able to just quickly bridge between their question and your bank of 10 to 15 examples and start to talk about it. And if it's not quite the right one, they will ask questions to get you onto the right one. You need to have your ears open at that point. When the interviewer starts asking you questions, you need to be thinking about, why am I being asked this follow-up question? Are they trying to take me down a particular path that I may not have been traveling on when I was talking about it myself? So, in summary, you don't need to guess the leadership principle. You need to know them well in advance. Build your example bank based on the leadership principles well in advance. Then when you're asked the question, forget about what leadership principle you think it is. Just think about which is the best example in my bank of 10 to 15 to use to respond to this question. And if you haven't got it quite right, your interviewer will course correct you. I hope that is helpful, Mahesh, sorry. Okay, moving on then. Oh, we have a nice bunch now. Oh, there we go. No one's asked me to do any accents yet, though. Totally understandable. Okay. Do you need consensus on a panel, or does the team go with the majority? Yeah, just trying to understand if the hiring manager and the bar raiser have additional weighting or not. It doesn't need to be consensus. So the job of the bar raiser, and it is the bar raiser who orchestrates the debrief interview. Their job is to draw out all of the necessary data to make a good decision on the candidate. In an ideal world, a bar raiser is always very happy if the process of drawing out that data takes the entire group to the same conclusion, because then you've got high quality data that is very clear, and that's what's allowing everybody to come to the right decision. That's the ideal outcome for a bar raiser. It doesn't happen all the time. I couldn't tell you, statistically speaking, in my experience, how many times that happened, but it doesn't happen all the time. Quite often you end up with what's called a split loop, where some people are inclined and some people are not inclined, even though they've sat and listened to all of the same data. If that happens and you've got a split loop, it's down to the hiring manager and the bar raiser to try and come to a consensus, where either it's an inclined or not inclined and both can agree on it. So it is very likely that you end up with a split loop, and the bar raiser turns to the hiring manager and says, right, we've got a split loop. This is your position. This is my position. Can we get ourselves aligned? If the hiring manager and the bar raiser cannot get themselves aligned, ultimately the responsibility lies on the bar raiser. Sorry, my husband's making a lot of noise outside this door. I don't know if you can hear it. The responsibility lies on the bar raiser to make the final decision. So the general scenario will be, if a hiring manager is inclined, but a bar raiser is not inclined, then it will be a no hire. That's called a veto, where the bar raiser just cannot get aligned with the hiring manager who wants to hire someone. If a hiring manager is not inclined and a bar raiser is inclined, the outcome will still be a not inclined, because no bar raiser is going to force a hiring manager to take a candidate that they really don't want. That would just be the most horrible experience for both hiring manager and candidate. So the ultimate decision makers are the hiring manager and the bar raiser. The person with the absolute final hiring authority is the bar raiser. I hope that helps. Who is my enemy? I would hope no one is your enemy. Be lovely if we could live in a world where no one was anybody's enemy, wouldn't it? Okay, we're getting a bit philosophical now. Okay, let me just see what else we have. Yes, yes, yes. Oh, brilliant question, Lisa. Quite specific, but important. So I'm going to do this one for you briefly. First of all, Lisa, I have a video on my YouTube channel specifically for military candidates. So I think it's still there. I don't think I've made it private. So please go and have a look at that, because that covers off. I was bar raised on a number of military panels, and it is quite different in terms of the language used by the candidates. So that's why I did that video. Please go and have a look at it. Do I recommend you translate your experience into civilian speak? Yes, if you possibly can. It's really important that they can understand what you're talking about. Now, if you can use an acronym, because you've asked me here, provide a brief explanation of it and then continue using the acronym, that's fine. But my experience of working on with the military guys on their panels is it tends to be acronym after acronym after acronym. It's almost a different language. So you just need to think about how scalable is that solution to use an acronym, explain it, use another acronym, explain it, use another acronym and explain it. Yeah, so use them if you need to and then explain it. But actually, if you at all can, try and speak civvy. Try and avoid, go watch the video. Go watch the video. And if it's not there, reach out to me and let me know it's not there and I will get you access to it. I'm pretty sure it's still there, but just in case it isn't, I think I've got 3 big tips in there for military candidates that I think will be really useful for you. Okay, moving on then. Okay. Okay, just say I'm gonna quickly hop through this. So usually when you interview for a role, the first step is to have a chat with the recruiter, but for Amazon, this does not seem to be the case. The recruiter call was always pre or post final round. Any reason why? That's your personal experience. Actually, that's not necessarily always the case across the board. As I mentioned earlier, the Amazon interview process varies enormously between different business units and different teams. So there are plenty of people who will actually get a pre-screen from a recruiter before the recruiter even hands the resume / CV to the hiring managers. There are plenty of teams where the hiring manager will okay the resume / CV, and the first conversation will then be a pre-screen with the recruiter. There are plenty of teams that don't do it at all and take the candidate straight to first round interview with a hiring manager or a member of the team. So that may well have been your experience, Jasir, but I promise you that's not everybody's experience. There is so much range and diversity in the Amazon interview process. So if ever you read anywhere, it's this step, that step, that step, that step. I think fact of the day, if any of you are on LinkedIn, somebody issued, the guy that does fact of the day issued that the other day and said, these are the steps. And it was a massive oversimplification of those steps. There's so much more variety in it. So guys, you just have to be prepared. Oh, folks, sorry, trying to get better at not using that type of gender specific language. Folks, you just need to be pretty much prepared for anything. Okay. Just do a quick time check. Okay, about 15 minutes. Quick look, see what else we've got. Okay. Oh, this is interesting. Ashish, okay. So you're welcome. You had 4 interviews for an operation role, and yesterday HR informed you that you'd have a 5th, and you're stressing about it. What does it mean? Okay, so it means that they could not get to a final decision. I would usually say it's pretty rare, but I hear about it more and more these days. So sometimes even the bar raiser isn't quite sure what decision to make. And the team as a whole agrees that they need one more person to come in and do a final interview to help them make a final decision. That person is usually the skip manager, so the manager's manager. Not always, but it is usually that person. And they're there just to kind of add a final extra bit of perspective because the group just couldn't land on a decision. As to whether you should stress about it, don't stress about it because it happened to me. It's exactly what happened to me. The group, and I'll tell you how I know this as well, but the team that did my loop, they just couldn't settle on an answer. There was one person who felt quite strongly that I should not be hired. And there was another person who felt quite strongly that I should be hired, and they were both highly credible individuals. So the bar raiser agreed that they would give me one more interview, which was with a VP. And at the end of the day, the VP obviously gave me the go because I got hired. The reason I know this is the person who was strongly opposed to me being hired ended up being one of my very best friends at Amazon, and we are still friends even after Amazon. So, sometimes it just takes a little bit of an outside perspective to help everybody get to a final decision. So don't stress about it. I can tell you from personal experience that it can definitely go your way. Just go into it exactly the same way as you went into all of the different interviews, and then fingers crossed, you'll get the outcome that you need. Good luck. I shall be thinking about you. Okay. Let me see, what else have we got? Okay, Pratik. Can we take around a minute to answer a question? I would not do that. A minute to answer a question. There is no way, in my point of view, that you would get across adequate behavioral data at sufficient depth and complexity to convince me that you would be bar raising if it only took you 1 minute to answer the question. So I would absolutely say no. Do not spend a minute answering a question. Spend more than a minute. I can't tell you whether it should be 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9, but I can definitely tell you 1 minute would not give me the level of data that I was looking for. Okay. Okay. Yes. Oh, Taylor, is there a second part to that? No, there isn't a second part to that. All right. For the question, what is your salary requirement? And then there's no second part to that. All right. Taylor, ask me the second part. Sorry, I thought that would be something that I could go into there, but it didn't have a second part to it. Okay. What else do we have? Okay, I think I understand what you're asking me here, Jonathan. So first time, welcome. Thank you very much for joining. Transitioning from the fashion industry. Okay, well, Amazon's in the fashion industry as well. How should one prepare with the overwhelming amount of information? Yeah, for a junior entry-level dev. All right. So, Jonathan, the first thing I'm going to do is send you to a different resource. And I know you said, how do I deal with too much information? When it comes to software development engineers, I suggest you go to sdeskills.com/Discord. That's a group run by a good friend of mine who is an ex-software development manager at Amazon and now works at Facebook. And they do a lot of work helping people with their preparation for software development interviews at Amazon. So they will be able to help you when it comes to the technical side of your interviewing and how you need to prepare for that. On the other side, when we're talking about the behavioral stuff, because the behavioral stuff will still be really important when it comes to your interview, You just need to find people that you can trust. It's a big issue. I know there's so much data out there, and you think, who do I listen to? Some of it is contradictory, some of it is just complete nonsense. So, Jonathan, find a couple of people that clearly have the credentials to give you guidance on Amazon interviewing. Obviously, I'm going to tell you I'm one, but there are a whole bunch of other ex-Amazonians out there doing what I do. Find them, focus on their content, ignore everybody else's, because there's nothing anybody else will tell you that those ex-Amazonians won't tell you. And you can just ignore all of the white noise, because they'll tell you the relevant, specific, actionable, and useful content. Ignore everything else. But make sure you go to sdeskills.com/Discord as a developer. I hope that helps. Okay. Yeah, Bikram. So if you shared an example in a way that covers all the facets and the interviewer says they don't have any follow-up questions, does that mean you covered everything? Yeah, probably. And I would usually say that's quite a good sign. If they just don't have any follow-up questions, it means that you've probably covered off everything that they would have wanted to know, and they're moving you on, because if they ask you anything, it's just a waste of time. So I would suggest that would be a good sign if that happened to you. Oh, okay. Your second part. I think I've covered this off, but let me be super clear. Should you share an example in such a way that they get a chance to probe or ask follow-up questions? No, don't do that. I think I mentioned that earlier. I think that's a really high risk strategy. And I've heard other interview coaches say that. I think it's crazy. Why would you leave out information in the hope that the interviewer is going to ask you exactly the right question in order for you to be able to share that information? That's bonkers. Share all relevant, specific information, and then the important stuff is on the table. Hoping that someone else is going to ask you the right question is madness, in my point of view. You're not there to create work for them. It's not your job to try and give them something to do. That's their job. Get everything you need to out on the table. And if you've covered everything and they say, fantastic, you've covered everything, let's move on. Great, be happy, move on. Okay, I hope that was really clear. Okay, yeah, Randy, good question, Randy. So during your panel interview, a bar raiser asked you how long ago the story occurred, and it was 10 years. Is that an issue? Do all stories need to be current, last 2 years? So I also have a video on this on my YouTube channel. So when you get off here, Randy, go check that out. I'll say pretty much the same thing, but I'll try and say it faster here. I strongly recommend that candidates use examples that don't date back further than 4 years. The reason being is Amazon is using your past experience to be indicative of how you will perform if you landed in their business in 2 weeks or 3 months, whatever your notice period is. That's their assumption. Your performance of the past will be evidence of your performance in the future. But if it's a very long time ago, 10 years ago, you did this thing, how are they going to be confident that something that happened 10 years ago is still going to be something that you would do if you landed in their business in 2 weeks or 3 months? It's hard to be confident, because they'll be asking themselves, why hasn't that thing happened more recently? Okay, yeah, it happened once 10 years ago, but if he's that great at it, then why hasn't he done it more recently? So that's why I say to people, trying to use examples no further back than the past 4 years. Now, if you do have one incredible example that just is like the height of your entire career to date, that is just the epitome of you as a candidate, you as an employee, and the best example anyone's ever going to land of that leadership principle, and that happens to be something from 10 years ago, then I would say use it. but literally one example, and it needs to be mind-blowing. Again, bizarrely, this happened exactly to me, and it was exactly 10 years old, the example, but it was me as a very junior marketer working directly with the CEO of British Telecom, which is a global telecoms company. And I was punching so far above my weight at a very, very junior kind of position. I felt it was a great story to talk about me and how my ability to really function at such a high level at such a young age helped define my career, and blah, 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 story. And that's the one I used with the VP, who was my 5th interview that got me in. So I'm definitely not one of those people that says never use anything that is that old. But if you're going to use it, it better be mind-blowing, and it better probably be just the only one you use that far back in time. Otherwise, you should definitely focus on things in the more recent past. I hope that helped, Randy. Please do check out the video on the YouTube channel. So we've got 5 minutes left. So let me just see. Sorry. Let me see what else we've got. All right. Sorry, someone's asked me to do an accent. It's going to be a funny one because I'm not that good at that one. Okay, so you had your first round interview, you asked 2 leadership principle questions. That's very standard. In your next one, you got asked 5. Could I clarify what the 5-question scenario indicates? So this would be my interpretation. And again, part of the challenge of all of this, and I know it's a little bit frustrating for you guys, is that there's not fixed rules for everything. There is so much variety and deviation and self-interpretation. So I will tell you how I feel in response to that scenario. Please be warned, it's not necessarily exactly what happened. That's just my interpretation. So if you can accept this feedback on that basis, please do. So the times where I found myself asking a lot of leadership principle questions, say 5 questions, was either going to be when I was interviewing somebody quite junior, kind of manager level, entry level stuff, where because of the nature of the work that they do, because they're junior, there just isn't that much complexity in the question or in the answer, should I say. And therefore, in the time I had, 45 minutes to an hour, I ended up getting through quite a lot of examples. The other scenarios where I found myself asking that many questions, if I was talking to someone who was more senior, was that actually the examples that they were giving me, even though they were senior, were pretty simple examples without complexity. And I found myself in a position where they were so simple that I couldn't even come up with follow-up questions that I thought would give me extra data for my leadership principles. So I would then move on to another question to try and gather more data on that leadership principle, but from a different scenario. So from what you've just described to me, potentially, if you're junior, your first one, you may have come up with, maybe you went in all guns blazing with your very, very best examples. It may well have been because they were your best examples and they were rich and they were complex, your interviewer only needed to ask you 2 leadership principles because you spent a lot of time talking about those first examples. Now you've come to your second interview and you've used your kind of gold standard examples and you're on to kind of the layer below that, your silver ones. They may not have been as complex and rich as the ones you used first time round, and therefore they found themselves in a position to need to ask you more leadership principle questions in order to gather data, because the answers you gave them weren't as complex as perhaps you'd given the first time round. That would be a possible scenario, but as I said, there's so much variability here. It may be something else as well, but that's the best I can offer you in terms of this and the data that you're able to give me. I hope that helps in some way. Richard. Hey, Richard. That's nice to see you. There's a face I recognize. How are you doing? All right. Is data vital in every answer? No, data isn't vital in every answer. It is vital overall. So there are plenty of examples that just don't lend themselves very well to having metrics and data in the example. So sometimes customer obsession doesn't lead all that well to data. Earn trust sometimes doesn't lead all that well to data. And that's okay. If it doesn't make sense for data to fit in the story, then your interviewer will be fine with that. But overall, when the kind of big picture is looked at for your interview process, if you don't have any data, or if you have very little data, or if you don't have data in places where your interviewer thinks you really should have had data, that's when it does become a problem. So no, not every time, but overall, they're going to need to see that you can provide data. You think like an Amazonian. Richard, if you go to my YouTube channel, I think the very last video that I released, because I haven't done one for a little bit, so I go into a lot more detail about the 4 different scenarios and how to deal with those different scenarios if you don't have metrics. So please head over to my YouTube channel for that video. It will help you, I promise. Okay. Let's just do it. Oh, we're at time. Oh, we're at time. Let me just have a quick look and see if there are any extra questions that I think are going to be useful. Just see it. I'm going to answer that question for you. Give me 2 seconds. Okay, gosh, there are a couple of here. All right, I'm going to do 2 more, guys. Folks. Sorry, I'm shaking my head. I'm cross at myself for failing to do that. Okay, where was that one? A New York accent? No, not very well. Sorry, Lisa, that was shocking. I'll have to watch more Goodfellas, I think. All right, so where was that one about nerves? Somebody asked me about nerves. Jasir, that was you. Yeah. So is it appropriate to tell the interviewer that you're super nervous? Again, I do have a video on this because you're not the only person that says that to me. I think it is. I think it's absolutely fine to tell your interviewer that you're nervous for a number of different reasons. It helps you kind of let the weight off your shoulders so you don't spend all of your time in your interview trying to suppress your nerves and your behaviors, and it allow you to focus on what you need to focus on, which is the data. It also helps them because they don't spend their time worrying that, oh my God, are they really nervous? And what can I do? Because you've got it out in the open. If you're like me, I have a very strange thing called I have a tremor. So when I'm nervous, like this bottle of water will start doing this. So if I've warned the interviewer about my essential tremor, then they don't start freaking out that maybe I'm about to have some kind of heart attack. So yes, I think it's appropriate. And I do have a video. So if you go check out the YouTube channel, you'll find a video in there about nerves and my recommendation as to how you deal with them with your interviewer. Okay. And then the one last one I wanted to do was leveling. Okay. Hey, Dina, how you doing? Thanks for joining. I love that pink. That's a great pink. I think I might try and buy a lipstick in that pink. Okay. Is it possible that the panel can level you down based on your answer in the loop? If they do, should you still accept the offer? Yes, they can definitely level you down. So, couple of scenarios. So the first scenario being that you do not appear to be raising the bar at the level that you're being interviewed for, but the team believe that you would raise the bar at the level below. The hiring manager will be given the option by the bar raiser to de-scope the role and hire you at a junior level in a reduced scoped role. Sometimes it happens. Sometimes a hiring manager is willing to do that. And what they'll have to do is explain to the bar raiser exactly what they plan to do to de-scope the role, because the bar raiser is going to need to be convinced that they are actually going to de-scope the role, rather than just put someone who's too junior for the role into the role and force them to work at a more junior level, at a junior pay level, but in a more senior role, because that's unacceptable. That's one scenario. The second scenario is you could be down leveled, be given we would hire this person at an L something, whatever level that is, one level below, but we will not de-scope this role in order to take that person on. So what then you end up having is an inclined at a more junior level, and the recruiter will be tasked to see if there are other roles at a more junior level that might appeal to you. If it turns out there is, because they might look and you would also be responsible for looking, they will then hand you over to the recruiter for that other role. And that team will then have to decide whether they want to re-interview you completely or do one interview with you to see whether they feel that you are raising the bar at that level, at that role. And then, of course, the final outcome is actually, we think this person would be raising the bar at an L5, but at this point, we're not convinced that that would be the case. And we aren't at this point invested enough to put the work in to find them something else. And in which case you'll just get unfortunately, this person just is not at the high enough level for this role. You asked me if you should still then accept the offer if they've down leveled you. That's up to you. It's up to you about... People get really hung up about seniority and their levels. And that's not just at Amazon, right? That's at any organization. My personal view as a career coach, not that I'm a career coach, but if I was talking to one of my team about this type of a concept, I would be saying to them, you have to put your pride aside. Don't worry about the actual level and think about, is the work that you're being offered the type of work you want to do? Will it challenge you? Will it stimulate you? Is the organization an organization you want to get into so that you can then evolve your career further? Is what they're offering to pay you at that lower level an acceptable pay for you? Think about those three different variables and then come to your own decision as to whether you should take the offer or not. Because if the more junior work is not going to challenge you, not going to give you area for growth, then why do it? If they're not going to be able to pay you what you need to be paid, then you would never do it. So there's no right or wrong to whether you should accept a down-leveled offer. You need to decide on those three criteria whether that is going to be the right future for you, irrelevant of the number 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever it is. The number is not important. The work, the opportunity, and the compensation is all that's important. Okay, so guys, I'm just so useless at this, aren't I? Folks, we are now at time. So what I want to do is, I said I would share with you something awesome. So you can see here the Amazon Interview Wiz Academy URL. If you go there, you can get my Customer Obsession Leadership Principle Masterclass absolutely free, not a penny. I will not chase you and try and upsell you to the rest of my course. The reason I give it to you is, first, of course, I want you to look at my content and think it's brilliant, like Iatha did and got themselves a job. I want you to think my content is brilliant, and I want you to obviously buy some more. But customer obsession is one leadership principle that absolutely every single one of you, if you make it all the way through the process, will get asked. I could bet my children's lives on it. If you made the whole way through, you will get customer obsession at some point. So if I'm going to give away any leadership principle masterclass, customer obsession is the one to give. So please take it, because I promise you, you will get value from it. So just hop over there, take it out. If it's not for you, if you don't decide you want to invest, that's fine. I promise you, I will not chase you with marketing. I want my product to stand on its own 2 feet and be good enough to make you want to buy more. If you don't, I will not be chasing you for marketing. So that's the URL there. If you don't get it here, watch the replay. If you don't get it on the replay, it's spattered all over the place when it comes to my YouTube channel. It's also in my About section in LinkedIn if you want to go look there. Okay, so that is it for today, guys. I'm sorry, folks. I will be back on Wednesday for another session. That's at 5:30 in the afternoon, British summertime. I will not be doing another session next Monday because I will be on holiday, as we call it here in the UK, vacation in the US, and I'm not sure where everybody else. But so please come back on Wednesday. If not, then I will then be here again the following Monday. Thank you very much, everybody. Well done for you who got yourselves jobs. I'm super, super proud of you. So thrilled. For those of you with interviews coming up, big fingers crossed for you. Please stay safe out there in that still crazy, scary world that we're living in. Thank you very much for joining. I'm very grateful. See you soon. Bye-bye.